Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. We're so close to 30,000 subs, and you can make that possible. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories. I met Susie on Hinge, and her profile looked like something out of a lifestyle blog. You know, those people who have the perfect lighting in every single photo, like they carry around a personal sun. That was her. There was this picture of her holding a coffee cup at a rooftop bar, wearing oversized sunglasses, and that kind of off-the-shoulder sweater that makes it look like she accidentally slipped into looking perfect. Her prompts were kind of vague, looking for someone who can make me laugh and order the right appetizer, but that didn't set off any alarms. I mean, who doesn't want a good meal and a laugh? We matched on a Tuesday night and were chatting by Wednesday morning. She replied fast, was funny in a dry kind of way, and seemed genuinely curious about stuff. I told her I worked in marketing, and she asked if that meant I was responsible for every annoying ad on YouTube. I laughed, gave her a hard time about being a coffee snob, and we bantered about the best croissants in the city for an hour before she suggested grabbing dinner. Our first date was at this trendy Korean place she picked downtown. She said she'd been wanting to go but hadn't gotten around to it, and I didn't think anything of it. We met up outside the restaurant, and she was even prettier in person. The kind of pretty that makes you double check your reflection in every reflective surface on the way in, just to make sure your face hasn't melted from nerves. The date went, well, honestly, it felt pretty solid. She was animated and playful, laughed at my dumb stories, asked a lot of questions, like a lot. Not just the usual stuff about work or hobbies, but stuff like what kind of dog I'd be if I had to be one for a year, or if I ever cried at Pixar movies. I left feeling kind of smitten and also thinking, wow, finally, someone cool who is into crypto or on a weird spiritual cleanse. She texted me later that night thanking me for dinner and saying she had a really fun time. Over the next week, we texted a bunch. She had sent photos of meals she made or coffee she was drinking with little snaps of her day, asking if I wanted to hang out again. The next place she wanted to try was this Argentinian grill that had just opened. Again, she picked the spot, and I was like, okay, maybe she's just into food. No red flags yet. By the third date, something started to feel off. Not in a huge way, but she was kind of distracted, like she was multitasking in her head. When I joked about something that had her dying laughing the week before, she gave a polite chuckle and quickly changed the subject. She was glued to her phone when I went to the bathroom. I saw the glow from across the table. I brushed it off. Maybe she was busy or tired or just having a weird day. People are allowed weird days. The fourth date is when everything flipped. We were at this French bistro she'd wanted to go to forever, and I was halfway through my steak frites when she said, super casually, I feel like you're gonna rank pretty high. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. I asked her what she meant, and she said, still scrolling her phone, oh, me and my girls have this Discord. We rate our dates, like it started as a joke during lockdown, but it kind of became a thing. You're not the worst. Then she smiled and went back to her glass of wine like she hadn't just dropped that bomb. I asked if she was serious, and she was like, yeah, I mean, dating apps are kind of trash, right? This makes it more fun. Plus, guys always want to pay, so I just let them. She didn't even flinch when she said that. Like, she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Like it was just modern dating or whatever. She told me that she doesn't actually want a relationship right now. She just likes meeting different energies, and that good meals and awkward stories are worth the time. I think I sat there in silence for like 30 straight seconds. My brain was buffering, trying to figure out if I was being pranked. She went on to say she has a running list of date scores: food, conversation, vibes, outfit choices, how fast the guy offered to split the bill or not. All of it. And she laughed when she said that she once gave a guy a 2.4 for ordering chicken tenders on their first date. At that point, I didn't even finish my drink. I made up some excuse about needing to feed my roommate's dog or something dumb. She didn't look offended or surprised. I guess she's used to people bailing once the truth comes out. Or maybe she already had enough material to get a new ranking out of me. I left the restaurant walking way too fast, half annoyed and half impressed in a really messed up way. Like you have to be a different breed of confident to build an entire system for harvesting dinner and gossip from strangers. I texted her later that night just to clarify if she was for real, and she replied with a winking emoji and a screenshot of her rating spreadsheet, with my name blurred out, but I knew it was me. There was a comment that said, super polite, laughed at all my dumb jokes. Def would be a 9 if he wasn't allergic to cats. I unmatched and blocked her the next day, but I kept thinking about it for weeks. Not because I missed her or anything, but because now every time someone suggests dinner for a first date, I can't help but wonder if I'm about to be turned into content for a private roast session in some digital girls group chat. Anyway, that's my story about Susie. If you ever see a girl suggesting Korean barbecue or rooftop bistros and carrying a suspiciously large tote bag, maybe pack a sandwich ahead of time and save your wallet. This one starts with a guy named Chase, and yeah, I know, of course, his name was Chase. It already sounds like the start of a bad rom-com or a frat boy memoir, but at the time I wasn't thinking that deep. His profile was chill, a little too polished maybe, but he had this look that felt grown without being stiff. His pics were mostly outdoorsy, in hiking, sipping a cocktail on a rooftop, holding a dog that probably wasn't his, but he seemed normal. Like, just got promoted but still shops at Trader Joe's kind of normal. He had a short bio that said something like, looking for real connections, good food, bad puns, and deep convos. He messaged me first, which doesn't always happen, and his opener wasn't cringe. He said my book Stack Photo made him want to finally finish one of the 3 novels collecting dust on his shelf, and we started talking books. Then music, then travel. The combo felt easy. He had that older guy charm, confident but not aggressive, like he actually listened. Within a few days, he asked if I wanted to meet up for dinner and pick this Italian place I'd never been to, kind of tucked away near the edge of the city. Not super flashy, but nice enough to wear jeans that don't stretch. I got there early because I'm a psycho about being late, and he showed up just a few minutes after me. He was taller than I expected and had that just enough stubble look like he trimmed it 15 minutes before walking in. He smelled like cedarwood and ambition. We sat at a booth in the back, low lighting candles, the kind of setup that tells you someone either wants a romantic vibe or is trying to hide from someone they know. Dinner started off fine. We were talking about travel stories. He mentioned backpacking through Eastern Europe. And I was telling him about this disastrous trip I took with friends that ended with one of us getting food poisoning on a train. We laughed, we ate, it was chill. Then midway through the second course, he glanced toward the entrance and froze a little. Not like danger froze, but like, oops, this is happening froze. I turned to see what he was looking at, and this woman was walking toward us. Tall, red lipstick, wearing a coat that probably cost as much as my rent. She looked pissed. I looked back at Chase, and before I could even ask what was going on, he let out this weird half-sigh, half-smile and said, okay, full honesty time. I thought he was about to tell me he forgot his wallet or that he used to be in a band. But no, he said. So, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm in an open marriage. That's my wife, Marla. She's just here to make sure there's trust between us. I didn't say anything, because what do you even say to that? He continued like this was a totally casual thing, telling me they had been navigating a non-traditional set, and he wanted to be transparent. But then the wife slid into the booth next to him. Didn't say hi, didn't introduce herself. Just stared at me with this look like she was about to crack open my head and pour in her own version of the truth. It was beyond awkward. I just sat there blinking, trying to understand what the hell was happening. Then Chase said something that fully broke my brain. He said, this is actually kind of a loyalty thing too. Like, I want to see how you handle honesty and pressure, if you're cool under it. So now I'm part of some weird test. Marla, the wife, finally speaks up. She's got this low, intense voice, and she goes, he didn't tell me he was meeting anyone tonight. I found out by tracking his location. She looked at me like I should feel bad, like I was complicit in something. And I get it, but I had no idea he was married. She looked at him and said, so this is your experiment now. Cool. At this point, I was sweating but also just really, really confused, because Chase didn't even seem fazed. He calmly asked if we should all get a drink and talk this out like adults. Like we were resolving a dinner reservation conflict, not sitting in the middle of an emotional implosion. I asked him, very plainly, why he didn't mention he was married before this dinner. And he said, if I told you up front, you wouldn't have come. That's kind of the point. I wanted to see how real your intentions were. I don't know what kind of mental gymnastics he was doing, but I wasn't stretching along with him. Marla stood up at that point and threw her napkin onto the table, then looked directly at me and said, Just so you know, I never agreed to any of this. He likes pretending we're in an open thing, but he just wants permission to cheat without calling it cheating. And she walked out, just like that. Chase, instead of going after her, shrugged and said something like, well, that could have gone smoother. Then asked if I wanted dessert. Yeah, dessert. I said no, grabbed my bag, and dipped. I didn't even say goodbye. Just left him sitting there like some broken AI boyfriend who glitched halfway through his programming. The next day, he sent a message like nothing had happened. Something dumb like, hey, had a wild night, huh? Hope you're not mad. I didn't answer. A few days later, he unmatched, and that was that. I later found out from a Reddit thread someone shared with me that Chase is kind of infamous in local dating circles. Apparently, he's done this before, sets up loyalty tests by inviting women to dinner and then having his wife, who might not even be his wife for real, crash the date. Some people think it's a kink thing. Others say it's just pure manipulation. I still don't really know what to believe, but now every time I see a guy with a photo of a dog and a rooftop cocktail, I wonder if his openness comes with a side of surveillance and a dramatic dinner ambush. Okay, so this one's actually hard to talk about, not because of feelings or whatever, but because I still get secondhand embarrassment just thinking about how deep I got pulled into it. I met Zara on Bumble, which I barely even used back then. Like, I go on once every few months, swipe around while eating cereal, maybe get a match or two, and then forget the app even existed. But Zara's profile popped up one night when I couldn't sleep, and it was that kind of different that makes you stop scrolling. She wasn't trying too hard. No fake travel pics, no filtered selfies. Her bio just said, if you're into building things from scratch and eating overpriced decay bowls, we'll get along. We matched and started talking that same night. She had this vibe that made you feel like you were already in the middle of a really cool life. Like, she didn't just talk about starting a business. She talked like she'd already started 10. Said she'd worked in UX, dabbled in branding, helped a friend launch a clothing line. It wasn't braggy though. It was smooth, natural. The kind of person who knows how to make you feel lucky for being in the room. I told her I was working a boring job at a real estate tech company, managing data for leasing apps, and she didn't mock it. She asked questions. Wanted to know how I'd change the system if I could. I didn't even realize how frustrated I was with my job until I was explaining it to her. She listened, really listened, and then started throwing out ideas like, why doesn't anyone create a renter first platform? And what if there was a way to rank landlords like Yelp, but smarter? I was like, yo, that actually doesn't sound awful. Our first date was at a weird tea bar that doubled as a co-working space. She showed up with a sketchbook and a Chromebook covered in stickers that probably cost more than the laptop itself. We didn't even do the usual date small talk. She dove into what she'd been researching lately: design thinking, microfinancing, brand psychology. It should have been annoying, but it wasn't. I was into it. It felt like she was building something and I was getting invited into the garage. Within 3 weeks, we were basically inseparable. She'd come over and we'd whiteboard ideas on the back of my closet door with dry erase markers. She'd stay the night and in the morning be making coffee while pitching me ideas for an app that helps young renters manage credit or a gamified budgeting platform. I had notebooks full of stuff we came up with: names, features, competitors, user pain points. She called it dreamstorming, and yeah, I know how that sounds now, but at the time I was into it. Then one night, lying on the floor of my apartment, eating takeout, she looked at me dead serious and said, you need to quit your job. I laughed. I thought she was joking, but she kept going, saying I was wasting time, that if we didn't jump now, someone else would beat us to the idea. She said, you already built the framework. You're the brain. I'll handle the execution. She made it sound so real, like we were already on the road to pitching investors. She even pulled up a pitch deck template and we started filling it in that same night. 2 weeks later, I quit. Not like I stormed out. I gave notice. But the second I handed in that letter, I felt both terrified and weirdly electric, like maybe this was it. Maybe I was finally doing something worth the risk. Zara seemed hyped too. She said we'd take a week to really build out the MVP and then start prototyping. We scheduled 2 days to work out of a co-working space in the city that she said her friend had passes for. I showed up both days. She only showed up the first. She said she wasn't feeling well the second day. Then she said her Wi-Fi was out the next, and it was a family thing. After a week of vague texts and one missed call, she stopped replying altogether. No explanation. No, hey, this isn't working. Just silence. I try everything. Called, messaged, even emailed her. Nothing. It felt like she just evaporated. Like one day she was sketching wireframes on my walls and the next she didn't even exist. About a month later, I was doom scrolling LinkedIn. Don't ask why. I was in a weird headspace, and I saw a post that made my stomach drop. Some guy named Luca had posted about proudly launching Rentaware, a renter-first property management solution, and the screenshots looked exactly like the pitch deck Zara that I built. I clicked through the site and the design, the copy, even the taglines were mine. Word for word. The logo was different, but the bones, all me. Then I scrolled down and saw Zara listed as co-founder and head of product. That's when it clicked. Luca wasn't just some tech guy she met later. He was her ex. She had told me about him once. Said they used to work together, he was too controlling, and she needed space. Whole time I was sitting there drawing up product flows, she was rebuilding the dream with him on the side. Using my pitch deck, my research, my freaking sticky notes. I didn't even know how to react. Part of me wanted to call her out, make a scene, report the company, something. But another part of me just felt so stupid I couldn't even move. I left a stable job for an idea that got taken out from under me by someone I trusted. Someone who made quitting feel like an act of bravery. I haven't heard from her since. Not a single word. I still have the screenshots, though. The Slack messages. The draft emails where we broke down our go-to-market strategy. But none of it means anything now. They're running the thing. Got seed funding, hired designers, launched beta last month. Meanwhile, I'm picking up contract work and trying to rebuild my savings. If anyone ever tells you to quit your job for a startup after 3 weeks of dating, they just don't. Diego was one of those matches that immediately felt like a win. His profile was super chill. Photos of him playing piano, biking through some foggy hill trail, holding a coffee with a book tucked under his arm like he lived in a coming-of-age movie. No gym mirror shots, no cryptic quotes. Just amateur documentarian, good listener, always down for tacos. That's literally what it said. It wasn't anything flashy, but caught my eye, and something about the phrase amateur documentarian sounded mysterious in a cool way, like he's either filming birds or chasing street art or something each like that. We started talking and instantly had this flow. He had this really calm texting style, none of that overexcited haha spam or weird punctuation. He asked thoughtful questions and didn't make it feel like a job interview. We ended up trading favorite films, and he dropped a few deep cuts I hadn't even heard of. Not pretentious, just into it. Like he cared about stuff in a very specific, unhurried way. He seemed mature in the good way, like he knew who he was and wasn't out here trying to prove anything. So we made plans. First date was at this quiet little bar with dim lighting and mismatched chairs, the kind of place where you almost feel too loud for the room. He got there first and waved from a booth in the back like we were old friends. In person, he had this soft energy, steady eye contact, slow smile, never felt rushed. It was honestly nice. Like he wasn't trying to perform, he was just there. We talked about movies and childhood and how both of us got through the worst parts of 2020 by walking aimlessly around our neighborhoods with headphones in. He told me about the short doc he made about urban decay in forgotten suburbs. I told him about my failed attempts to learn guitar. It felt natural. No weird vibes, no awkward pauses. We even walked around the block after the bar closed. That kind of date. We hung out 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. Each time, he'd suggest something low-key, coffee shops, art galleries, bookstores. It was never expensive or flashy, just intentional. Thoughtful. Once we sat in a laundromat for like an hour watching the dryers spin and talking about our high school selves like we were trying to piece together who we used to be. The 4th time, we met at this weird little cafe that only played vinyl records and had a wall of cassette tapes people could borrow. It was raining, and we ended up just chilling there for hours, drinking weird ginger lattes and talking about fear. He brought up this whole idea about emotional patterns, how people repeat the same behaviors on dates without even realizing it. I was like, yeah, totally. Then he dropped it, casually, like he was talking about the weather. He said, I've actually been recording most of my dates lately, just for self-reflection. I kind of laughed at first because I thought you meant journaling or like voice memos he made after the date to remember stuff. But then he clarified, he meant recording the actual dates. Video, audio, sometimes both, without the other person knowing. I just blinked. Sat there for a second thinking maybe I misheard. But no, he started explaining how it helped him identify patterns in his tone and body language, things he might miss in the moment. Like some kind of sports replay analysis, except it was for emotions and other people's reactions. He said it wasn't about catching people doing anything bad. It was just to understand dynamics. I asked if he was serious, and he nodded like this was totally fine. Said he had a small mic clipped under his jacket for 2 of our dates, and once even used a pocket GoPro he barely turned on. He made it sound harmless, like a quirky habit, like journaling but with hidden surveillance. I straight up froze. My brain was playing back every conversation we had, trying to remember if I ever said anything too personal. If I ever joked about something I wouldn't want clipped into some sad little montage with piano music and black and white filters. I asked him if he had watched them back. He said, yeah, of course. He even had a folder with date footage sorted by person. Only first names, he said, nothing identifiable. Like that made it better. He tried to explain how he got the idea from this indie filmmaker who did something similar with conversations and how it helped him grow emotionally. I just sat there staring at my coffee like I could hide inside it. The weirdest part, he didn't seem embarrassed. He wasn't even trying to justify it that hard. It was like he genuinely didn't see a problem with it. He just thought it was smart, reflective, experimental. I didn't even finish my drink. I told him I had to go, mumbled something about early meetings, and dipped. I barely remember the walk home. It was like my brain kept glitching. This guy who talked so much about connection and honesty and vulnerability was literally wiring his jacket for audio without telling anyone. That's not emotional growth. That's being a creep with good lighting. He texted me the next day like nothing happened. Asked if I wanted to check out this new bookstore with a cafe in the back. I didn't reply. I didn't even block him. I just archived the chat and deleted his contact. I felt like replying would somehow pull me back into his weird little project. A few weeks later, I told a friend who works in tech about him, and she got this look on her face like she'd heard it all before. She said some people treat human connection like a product, like data to be optimized. She was probably right. I still think about those dates sometimes. Not because I miss him or whatever, but because I wonder if he's still doing it. Still sitting in his room with headphones on, watching clips of girls laughing or fidgeting with their sleeves, writing down notes in some weird diary like, eye contact held for 4.5 seconds. Good sign. It creeps me out more the longer I sit with it. So, yeah, Diego. He had charm, he had taste, and he had a tiny mic hidden under his jacket. This one still stings a bit, but mostly in a wow, I really should have seen that coming kind of way. Chamita came into my life like a damn whirlwind. Like 1 second I was just casually swiping during my lunch break, and the next I was rearranging my week to see her again. She had that magnetic energy, the kind of person who walks into a room and everyone looks, not because she's loud or flashy, but because she just knows she belongs there. Her profile was short but confident. All of her pics looked like they were taken by someone who adored her, super crisp, candid, but perfect. One of her sitting on a fire escape eating noodles, another where she's mid-lap with her head thrown back. Her bio said, no time for games. I like eye contact, lawn walks, and a little chaos. That last part should have been my clue. We matched on a Sunday night. She messaged first, which already got my attention. Just a single line. You seem like the type who remembers birthdays. I had no idea what that meant, but it weirdly felt like a compliment. We messaged for a few days, and everything she said had this edge to it, like she was flirting and testing you at the same time. Not mean, just sharp. We met up that Friday for drinks at this bar she picked, one of those spots where the lighting is too low, and the menu was full of stuff like smoked rosemary bourbon foam, or whatever. She showed up wearing this oversized coat and bright red lipstick, and the moment she sat down, I felt like I was in over my head, but in a good way. That night went better than I expected. She was intense for sure, but in a way that kept you locked in. She asked deep questions out of nowhere like, what's your biggest regret from high school? Or what's something you pretend you're over, but you're not? She'd go quiet after you answered, and it felt like she was storing your words somewhere. Not judging, just keeping track. We kissed outside the bar under a busted streetlight, and she left in an Uber without looking back. I remember standing there grinning like an idiot, texting my group chat like, yo, I think I just met someone actually cool. From there, it moved fast, like suspiciously fast, but I didn't think it was weird at the time. She started texting every day. Not just how's your day stuff, but voice notes, memes, random thoughts at 2 a.m. She'd send me playlists with names like For When You Can't Sleep But Don't Know Why. It felt intimate fast, like we skipped 5 steps. We hung out twice a week minimum. She'd come over with snacks and vinyls from her friend's record shop. We'd sit on the floor, eating popcorn out of a mixing bowl, talking about movies we both pretended to love. She never stayed the night, though. Said she liked her own bed better, which I didn't question. She kept things just close enough. I started falling stupidly. I didn't admit it to anyone, but I started thinking about her all the time. I stopped swiping. Started writing down random things she said. Even Googled what it meant when someone dreams about you because she told me I had been in one of hers. But every now and then there'd be weird moments. Like one night we were listening to music and she suddenly asked, do you think people ever really get over their first love? I was like, I guess. And she got all quiet and said, just wondering. Other times she'd say stuff like, he would have loved this song, or that reminds me of someone I used to know, but she never said a name, never gave details. I figured we all have a past, right? One time I saw a notification pop up on her phone while she was in the bathroom. It was a Snapchat from someone named Jay. The little emoji threw me off. That wasn't just a friend emoji. That was breakup energy, but I didn't say anything. I wasn't trying to be that guy. Anyway, 2 months in, I started to feel things shift. Not huge, just little things. She didn't send as many voice notes. She canceled plans 2 weekends in a row with vague excuses. When we did hang out, she felt distracted, like she was listening but also waiting for something else to happen. Her phone kept lighting up and she'd glance at it, type something fast, then flip it over. I tried to ignore it. Told myself not to be paranoid, but the gut feeling got louder. You know when you're around someone and you can just feel their attention pulling away from you. Like they're there, but only halfway. Then one Thursday night, we were supposed to meet up after she finished work. I texted her around 6 like, still good for later. No reply. At 7, nothing. At 9, I sent a dumb meme trying to play it cool. Still nothing. Next morning, I woke up to see I was blocked. Not just on texts, on everything. Instagram, gone. Spotify playlist, deleted. Snapchat, no trace. She ghosted me like I was a spam caller. I didn't know what happened. I checked her socials through a friend's account and saw a story she posted that night. Blurry photo of some guy's hands over hers at a restaurant table, captioned, some things are worth the wait. That's when it clicked. Jay, the someone she used to know, her first love. The guy she said she was over without ever saying his name. He came back, and apparently I'd been the stand-in. A week later, I ran into a girl who used to know her through a mutual friend. She told me straight up, Jamia and Jay had a messy breakup and Jamia made a whole game out of leveling up, by dating someone better than him. She apparently said, I need him to see what he lost. I was part of that message. Once he reached out, she didn't need the signal boost anymore. I was just background noise. It sucked. Not in a heartbreak way, but in a wow, I was a prop kind of way. Like she never really saw me. She just needed someone with decent teeth and a full-time job to flex with until her real story came back around. This one starts at a coffee shop, not on an app, which I know sounds like a miracle in itself because everyone meets online now. But yeah, I was at this cafe that tries way too hard with their menu. Like, they sell toast with 5 words in the title. And I was sitting there on my laptop, just pretending to work while mostly people watching. Brian walked in with his cocky kind of posture. You know when someone walks like they're being filmed, like they expect someone to be watching? That was him. Tall, sharp jaw, wearing this open button-up layered over a white tee like it was 2012 again, but somehow pulling it off. He made some small talk in line with the barista and then sat down at the table next to me. I noticed him noticing me. He made eye contact for just a second too long. not creepy, just calculated. He eventually leaned over and made a comment about my laptop sticker, and before I knew it, we were talking. He was charming, I can't lie. Confident but not annoying. He asked about my job, my weekend plans, all the right questions without sounding like he was checking boxes. He didn't give me his number, though. He gave me his handle. Like, find me on Insta, I barely text. I thought that was a little weird, but whatever. I followed him later and saw his profile was kind of curated. Black and white pics. Lots of selfies that didn't look like selfies. Captions like choose your chaos and never explain. Still, he seemed interesting enough, and when he messaged me back, he asked me out for drinks. Quick, confident, no games. The date was at this bar downtown that felt like it was built out of repurposed furniture and guilt. Very hip. He was already at a table when I arrived, and again, he off this very deliberate energy. He kept adjusting the angle of the candle on the table, moving his drink slightly toward the middle, like the composition of everything mattered. Still, I ignored it because the conversation was good. He had funny takes on dating, told stories about his weirdest matches, and acted like he had all this insight on people. I figured he was just observant. There were a few strange moments, though, like he kept asking me these very specific questions. Stuff like, what's the first thing you judge someone on during a date? And do you think attraction is earned or instant? And when I answered, he'd smile and say, that's interesting, and then pause like he was mentally jotting something down. It wasn't a bad date. It actually felt fun, like maybe I'd met someone who wasn't just floating through life with no direction. He walked me to my car, gave me a hug, said he'd love to hang again. I drove home thinking, okay, that was solid. Maybe a little intense, but solid. I didn't hear from him for a few days. Then a week. I sent a message, just casual, asking how his week was. No response. 2 weeks later, I get this DM from a random account I don't follow. Just a link. Normally I don't click those, but it had a little preview I could see a frozen frame of me from the bar. I clicked. It was a YouTube video, his YouTube channel. A pickup channel. The title is literally breaking down my latest date. 5 mistakes she made without realizing. Thumbnail was him doing that hand on chin pose like some bro philosopher. I almost threw my phone. I watched it. I don't know why. Probably because I needed to know how bad it was. He filmed the whole date. Hidden camera. Probably on the jacket hook behind him or something. The audio was perfect. He'd edited in commentary clips of himself between parts of the date, like some twisted episode of reality TV meets TED Talk. He talked about my body language, how I crossed my arms when I felt challenged, how I qualified myself too early when I complimented his taste in music. He paused the footage to mock how I laughed too hard at one of his jokes. He even broke down my outfit like he was reviewing a red carpet look. Called it approachable but not high value. And the worst part? There were comments. Hundreds of them. Guys talking about the fold, some term they apparently use for when a woman starts to like you more than you like her. One dude commented, you could have taken her back if you wanted, she was right on the edge. Another said, her eye contact is submissive AF. She was into you by minute 12. I sat there just staring at the screen, not even angry yet, just hollow. Like, this guy turned our date into content, into training material. I wasn't a person. I was a segment. I messaged him. Of course he didn't reply. Then I flagged the video, reported the channel, and told YouTube he filmed someone without their knowledge. The video got taken down after like 5 days, but the damage was already done. It had over 40,000 views. A friend who's into media stuff told me that a bunch of these guys do that. It's a whole subculture. They make content out of dates using hidden cams, coaching each other on how to control the frame and nag people subtly. I felt like I had stumbled into this corner of the internet I was never supposed to see. For a while I didn't go out. I'd sit across from someone new at a cafe and wonder if there was a camera running somewhere. If I was being analyzed like some wildlife documentary. Every time I talked, I'd second guess how it would sound with the voiceover. Brian's still out there probably. His channel got taken down, but he just made a new one. Changed the name, reploaded half the old stuff. I checked once, just to see. I shouldn't have. This one starts kind of like every other. I think I finally met a decent guy story. You know when you match with someone and they don't immediately make your skin crawl or try to open with some awful pun? That was Matt. His profile was clean, like minimal effort but somehow well thought out. Just 3 photos, one hiking, one reading, classic bookshelf mirror flex, and one with a cat he swore wasn't his. His bio was short, said something about liking quiet mornings and loud music. I swiped right mostly because he seemed normal, which is rare, let's be real. He messaged first, and it wasn't anything fancy. Just so, do you actually like loud music or was that just for street cred? That led to a convo about our worst concert stories and bands we pretended to like in high school. He didn't ask for my number right away, didn't try to love bomb me or trauma dump in the first 10 messages. We texted for a few days before he asked if I wanted to grab coffee. The first date was nice in that very maybe we're both just tired of bad people way. He was tall, soft-spoken, really well-mannered, and had that quiet charm that's hard to find. He listened without interrupting, asked good questions, and actually remembered things I said. Like when I mentioned I hated peanut butter, and on the second date he brought a snack and literally said, "Don't worry, I checked. No peanut butter." We started seeing each other once a week and twice. It was easy. And I never say that. He wasn't flashy or intense, just steady. Like someone who already knew who they were and didn't need to make you their whole personality. He worked in graphic design, freelance mostly, and was super low-key about his work, but showed me a few pieces he was proud of. They were good. He was good. But then slowly I started noticing a few odd things. It started small. He had this one picture on his fridge of him and a girl who looked weirdly like me. Like I actually asked it was a filter edit or something. Same hair length, same general face shape. When I pointed it out as a joke, he got this soft look and said, "Yeah, people used to say we looked alike." I asked who she was, and he just said, "My sister." Then quickly changed the subject. Didn't seem weird at the time. I mean, siblings can look alike, and maybe I was reading too much into it. Except then it came up again. When we were talking about family stuff, and he said something about my sister used to love that song too, and he had this little pause. I asked if they were close, and he looked at me and said, real quiet, "We were." Again, changed the subject. A few days later, I Googled him. Not to be a creep, just curiosity. We'd been seeing each other for almost a month, and I didn't even know his last name until I saw a piece of mail on his counter. I typed it in, and sure enough, there was a memorial page. His sister passed away 3 years ago. The photo on the site, same girl from the fridge. She did look like me. A lot, actually. I felt weird. Not guilty, just confused. I didn't know what to do with that info, so I didn't bring it up. Then a week later, I met one of his friends at a small get-together. We were all playing some card game, and someone made a joke about Matt having a type. His friend laughed and said something like, "Yeah, man, you really do have a pattern. Long hair, soft features, same exact smile every time." Matt kind of laughed too, but then his friend looked at me and said, "You low-key look like his sister, though. That's wild." The whole room went quiet, like someone dropped a plate. Matt didn't even flinch. He looked at me and said, "I know. I noticed that the first day." I thought he was kidding. I literally laughed because I didn't know what else to do. But he wasn't laughing. He just said, in this matter-of-fact tone, she was my best friend. It makes sense I'd be drawn to someone like her. I felt sick. The rest of the night was a blur. I made an excuse to leave early, said I wasn't feeling great. On the way home, I kept replaying that sentence over and over in my head. It makes sense I'd be drawn to someone like her, like it was totally rational, like it wasn't something straight out of a messed up psychology documentary. The next day, I confronted him. Asked him directly if he dated women because they reminded him of his sister, and he didn't deny it. He said he didn't seek it out on purpose, but that it was comforting to be around someone who gave him the same energy, that it made him feel safe. I didn't even know what to say. I asked him if he thought that was healthy, and he just shrugged and said, "Grief doesn't always make sense." Which, okay, maybe it doesn't, but that doesn't mean you go out dating people who look like your dead sibling and just casually let them figure it out through clues and awkward conversations at game night. I stopped seeing him after that. No dramatic goodbye, just a slow fade. I think he knew why. He never texted me again. Sometimes I wonder if he's still out there, finding more versions of her. If I was subject 6 in some quiet grieving loop he doesn't even realize he's stuck in. That was Matt. Honestly, he was a bad person. He just had a grief hole so big he tried to fill it with strangers who looked like family. The first time I saw Jessica, she had on this giant hoodie that said, "Sorry, I'm late. I didn't want to come." And I thought it was hilarious. Her profile had these weird blurry film photos and random quotes like, "I collect thoughts the way old men collect stamps," which sounds fake deep, but I kind of liked it. It didn't feel like someone trying too hard, just odd enough to seem interesting. We matched on Tinder, which I usually only open when I'm either bored or stuck waiting somewhere for too long. I remember swiping at the DMV and stopping at her profile like, huh. She messaged first, said something random like, "Do you believe in fate or does your GPS just suck?" We ended up talking for hours. It was easy with her. No weird pickup lines, just weird thoughts. We talked about conspiracy theories, abandoned buildings, and our mutual hate for horoscopes, but still kind of checking them anyway. We met in person after maybe 4 days of talking. She wanted to go for milkshakes and a walk through this abandoned mini golf course outside the city. I'm not even joking. She said it was better than a bar because ghosts don't judge. I agree because honestly, it sounded fun. And it was. She had this energy that made even the most ridiculous stuff feel cinematic, like we were in a movie scene only we knew was being filmed. She didn't talk much about herself, though. Whenever I asked what she did, she'd say, "I'm in between everything," or "I collect people's reactions for a living." I thought that just meant she was a photographer or into art. I didn't press it. I figured she was just quirky. We kept hanging out. I wouldn't say it felt like we were dating exactly, but we were seeing each other. At least once a week, sometimes more. She always picked these unusual spots: an underground ping pong club, a taco truck that only opened after midnight, a laundromat where they played lo-fi music and gave out candy. I never knew what we were doing until it was happening, but it always felt kind of thrilling. The weird part started after maybe a month. One day she texted me, and the name popped up as Jessie, which was weird, because she'd always gone by Jessica. I figured maybe she changed it in her phone settings or something. But then when I checked her contact, it had a completely different number attached. I thought maybe she got a new SIM on her phone, so I asked about it. She brushed it off and said she had a few phones. Her explanation: "I like keeping people in categories. It's an efficiency thing." I laughed, thinking she was just being extra. Didn't really clock it. Then a friend of mine, Dan, who lives on the other side of the city, sends me a screenshot one night. It's a Tinder profile. Girl looks almost exactly like Jessica. Same face, different hair color, name says Ava. And the bio is something like, "Let's meet before I change my mind." I literally said, "Yo, I know her." He goes, "Dude, she just matched me." So I'm like, okay, weird. Maybe it's an old account or she's using different names for privacy. Still strange, but not totally crazy, right? Then I start digging a bit. I reverse search one of her photos and find another profile on Bumble. This time her name's Kat. Same face, different city listed, slightly different bio. I keep going. One by one, I find 5 different versions of her across 4 dating apps: Jessica, Ava, Kat, Layla, and Morgan. All of them had different bios, different music interests, different occupations. One said she was a poet, one said behavioral science, one was a full-on astrology queen. It was like she was playing characters. I confronted her. Not in a dramatic way, just a text like, "Hey, are you also a cat on Bumble?" No response, just silence. Then a day later, I get this link from an anonymous Instagram account. No message, just the link. I click it. It takes me to a private YouTube channel, a video titled "Dating in the Age of Mirrors, a Social Test." I press play and am hit with a montage of text messages, blurred faces, and voiceover. It's her, talking, calmly, like a narrator from a podcast. She starts explaining how she created multiple personas to test modern male behavior. Said she wanted to see how different men responded to different versions of the same woman, how appearance, tone, hobbies, and emotional availability shifted responses. She broke it down like data, showed charts, had voice memos layered in, quotes from our conversations, my words coming out of her mouth. I sat there frozen, watching myself on screen in this creepy, blurred out way. There I was, just a bullet point in a segment titled "Attachment After Week 3." She called it a social experiment and said she'd been collecting footage and notes over the span of 3 months. Some of it filmed from her point of view, some of it just screenshots. There was no hate, no mockery, just cold analysis. She called me subject for the daydreamer. I was literally a case study. I'd messaged her. She didn't reply. I flagged the video. It didn't come down. I tried reporting it again. Still nothing. A few days later, the video was gone. Not because of me, but because the whole channel vanished. I guess someone else figured it out too. Maybe one of the other subjects. I haven't seen her since. Sometimes I wonder if I was the last one or just the latest. If she's still out there now, building another version of herself, logging more data, seeing how many different types of people fall for the same face. So yeah, that was Jessica, or Eva, or Kat, whatever name she's using this week. I met Nicole on Hinge, which already felt like an upgrade from the usual Tinder chaos. Her profile stood out right away because it wasn't trying to be overly cool. She had one picture of her laughing with her hand covering her mouth, one of her at a bookstore, and one super blurry one that looked like it was taken by accident but still kind of artsy. Her bio said, writer, listener, believer in good coffee and bad karaoke. It felt genuine, not performative. She messaged me first, asked what the last book I gave up on was. I said Dune because, sorry, I tried like 3 times and my brain kept tapping out. She laughed, via text, and said that's a red flag but forgivable. We started chatting about books, movies, random stuff. She wasn't intense or overly deep, just sharp, like she could make anything sound interesting. First date was at a used bookstore cafe downtown. We were both 15 minutes early, which felt like a good sign. She had this quiet confidence about her, wore this oversized blazer like it was armor, but smiled like she'd known me for years. We walked the aisles with our coffee cups and talked about dumb childhood fears, indie films, and whether or not writer's block is real. It felt real, like actual connection. We started seeing each other regularly, not in a reluctant kind of way, but that soft in-between phase where it's still fresh, but there's momentum. She'd send me weird poems she found. I'd send her terrible song wrecks. She always responded with something clever, like she was building a longer conversation thread with every reply. About 3 weeks in, I was at her apartment for the first time. It was full of books and little notebooks stacked everywhere, like someone lived there who was constantly halfway through writing something. She had post-it notes on her bathroom mirror, her fridge, even one on her front door that said, "Don't explain. Show." I asked her what she was working on and she got kind of cagey. Said she was exploring some nonfiction ideas and didn't want to jinx them by talking too much. Fair enough. Then came the slip-up. We were sitting on her couch after dinner, just scrolling through YouTube and half talking, and she mentioned offhandedly that she once did a blog post about a guy who cried during their first date. I laughed and said that's brutal. She smiled and said, "Oh, don't worry, I always change names and details. It's more about the feeling." Something about the way she said that made my stomach drop a little. I asked, "Wait, you write about your dates?" She nodded, sipping her tea like it was no big deal. "Yeah, not all of them. Just the ones that stick." I asked if she told people. She said, "Not really, it's anonymous. Nobody's ever found themselves." I tried to laugh it off in the moment, but something about it felt off. Like I kept needing an outlet, that the way she said, "ones that stick," made it sound like she was collecting us. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I searched, just Googled random phrases she'd used in our convos, quotes she'd sent me, stuff she'd referenced. Nothing at first. Then I remembered a line she said during our first date, something about some books only need one reader. I typed that into Google with blog and dating, and boom. There it was. A Tumblr. No name, no face, just a minimalist layout and long blocks of text. The entries were titled things like "The one who ordered tea at a dive bar," and "He talked like he wanted to be quoted." I started scrolling. One post hit me instantly. The details weren't identical, but close enough. A guy who said he hated Dune, made a joke about astrology, loved discount candles, and had a weird thing about organizing his desktop icons. That was me. Every single line was about me. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. She called me the optimistic cynic and broke down every moment of our first 2 dates like she was dissecting a frog. She said I smiled like I was apologizing, and that I had a quiet desperation masked as charm. She described the way I laughed, the way I hesitated before answering questions. She even quoted something I said when I was tipsy about how I'm not trying to be the best, just not the worst. The worst part, the comments. There were regular readers, people who followed along, hissing where the story would go. One of them commented, "He's totally going to ghost her once she stops being mysterious." Another said, "You attract broken poets, it's kind of your thing." I felt like I was reading my own postmortem, and I wasn't even dead yet. I didn't say anything right away. I kept seeing her for like another week. I told myself maybe I was overreacting, that maybe I should feel flattered, like I made an impact. But the more time passed, the more it messed with my head. I didn't know if anything I was saying was real to her or just more material. Every compliment I gave, every story I shared. Was she listening? Or just taking mental notes for her next post? Finally, I brought it up. I didn't go nuclear. I just asked if she'd ever written about me. She smiled and said, "Would it bother you if I did?" I said, "Yeah, kind of." And she didn't apologize. She said, "Well, that's the risk of dating a writer." I left not long after. She didn't text me. I didn't text her. A few days later, another blog post popped up. The One Who Found Himself. She described how I'd backed away the moment reality got too sharp. Said I had a look in my eyes like I'd seen the backstage of a magic show and wanted the illusion back. I closed the tab. Haven't opened it since. Nicole was brilliant and sharp and good at words, but in the end, I was just another entry in her season arc. I met Farooq through a mutual friend on an app, which in hindsight somehow makes it feel even worse. Because when someone's been low-key pre-vouched for, your guard's way lower. I remember we met at his house party during that weird in-between time when people were pretending COVID was over, but still side-eyeing shared snacks. I wasn't even trying to meet anyone. I came for free food and to catch up with people I hadn't seen in forever. Then he walked up and offered me the last can of seltzer like it was a grand romantic gesture. He had that calm energy that makes you lean in. The way he spoke was kind of slow and careful, like he meant every word. He was dressed well but not flashy, like he knew how to layer and had good shoes, which matters more than people admit. We ended up talking for like an hour in a corner of the kitchen while chaos happened around us. It was one of those convos where you lose track of time, which always feels like a win. He asked for my number before I left and texted me that same night just saying it was nice to meet me. No pressure, nothing weird. From there, it escalated fast in that kind of slow burn way. Like he texts once or twice a day, always super thoughtful and not spammy. We didn't even hang out one-on-one for the first week, just kept messaging back and forth like we were building a rhythm. When we finally did go out, it was this really chill dinner at a Thai spot where he ordered for both of us without being annoying about it. I remember thinking, wow, he's actually present. Not looking at his phone, not scanning the room, just focused. Over the next few months, things felt solid. Not fireworks and fairy tales, but grounded. Like we go on long walks just talking about our families, past relationships, weird thoughts. He was smart, but in a way that didn't feel like he was trying to prove it. He always asked how I was doing mentally. Not in a fake deep way, but real. Checked in about work. Remembered when I had big meetings. Said things like, "I want to understand your chaos," which, yeah, sounds dramatic, but at the time I laughed it up. Around month 3, he started pulling back a little. Nothing obvious. Just slower replies, less energy. He'd still make plans, but they started to feel more last minute, less intentional. I chalked it up to work stuff. He said he was freelance and juggling a few new clients. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Then one night, we were at his place and he got up to shower. His laptop was open on the table. I wasn't snooping. I literally just leaned over to plug my phone into his charger, and I noticed a Telegram window was open. There was this long list of messages and a group chat titled Emotional Dynamics Lab. I know that sounds fake, but it was real and terrifying. I clicked it. The messages were from like dozens of guys, sharing screenshots, giving each other feedback, dropping phrases like compliance test, reward withdrawal, and controlled vulnerability. I scrolled up and saw his name all over the chat. He wasn't just in the group, he was running it. Admin badge and everything. He had posted long breakdowns of case studies, literal examples from his own dating life. One of them was about me. He didn't use my name, but the details were unmistakable. He called me Target B, broke down our first few dates like they were science experiments. Wrote stuff like, first contact, played it slow, allowed her to feel like she had control. Initiated delayed text response strategy day 12 to gauge reaction. High emotional engagement. Vulnerability spike after third meetup. Tested with family story. Logged confirmation. I froze. He had literally been tracking everything, logging my responses, testing how far he could push before I questioned things. There was one message where he explained how he intentionally got distant after I shared something really personal, just to observe her attachment pattern. I felt sick. When he came out of the shower, I didn't say anything. I closed the laptop and grabbed my bag. Told him I forgot I had to be somewhere early. He kissed my cheek, said, "Drive safe," like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't literally dissecting me behind a screen. I went home and didn't sleep. The next day, I tried to go back into the group chat through the web, but it was invite only. I've been lucky it was open on his screen. I couldn't find it again. I confronted him over text, just sent one message. "You study people like they're lab rats." He didn't deny it. He just replied, "It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding patterns. You weren't harmed." That was the last thing he ever said to me. I blocked him everywhere, deleted our messages. I told the mutual friend who introduced us, and she was horrified, said she had no idea. I believed her. But what hit hardest wasn't just the betrayal. It was realizing how many other women had probably gone through the same thing without ever finding out. He made it sound so clinical, so cold, like emotions were numbers on a spreadsheet, and the fact that there was a whole group of guys learning from each other how to copy this blueprint. That part stayed with me. I don't really date much now, not because I'm scared, just tired. It takes energy to trust people, especially when you've been turned into someone else's case file. That was Farooq, the listener who was just collecting data, the guy who looked you in the eye while taking notes in his head. Okay, so this one's straight up wild because the whole thing felt like a rom-com in the beginning. I don't mean that in a cute way. I mean it literally played out at one of those cheesy what if she's hiding something movies, except nobody was charming in the end and there was no background music. Just me sitting in my room trying to figure out if I'd lost my mind or been played. I met Aisha at a friend's engagement party, which is already hilarious in hindsight. She was standing near the champagne table with this look on her face like she was judging everyone's shoes. I was in the middle of pretending I knew the groom's cousin when I caught her eye. She gave me a half smile, just enough to make me walk over. And within like 5 minutes, we were talking about everything but the couple. She made this joke about how weddings are just ritualized financial commitments that involve appetizers. And I laughed way too hard, mostly because it felt like someone finally said it. We talked the entire night. I don't think I even congratulated the engaged couple. We didn't exchange numbers that night, though. She said, "I don't like the post-party texting awkwardness. Find me if you're really interested." It was bold, and of course I was into it. A few days later, I got her info through our mutual friend, and when I texted her, she replied immediately with, "Took you long enough." From there, it moved fast, like way faster than I was used to, but it didn't feel forced. We started hanging out almost every other day. Brunches, late night drives, bookstore runs. She had this really magnetic way of making everything feel like a moment. Even when we were just eating leftover takeout on my couch, she made it feel like we were part of something bigger. And honestly, she was amazing, on paper at least. She was ambitious, stylish, confident in this very specific, calculated way, like she always knew what to say in any room. She had a degree in psych and worked in branding, which made her conversations kind of addictive. Like, she'd psychoanalyze your favorite cereal and somehow make it feel intimate. I didn't even realize how deep in I was until my best friend pointed out that I hadn't gone out with the boys in over a month. Aisha had basically become the center of my universe, and I didn't even mind. She would talk about future us in a way that made me believe in it. Weekend trips, moving cities, kids' names, even, not in a run for the hills way. It actually felt kinda nice. Then, like 7 weeks in, she brought up proposals. Out of nowhere. We were sitting on a bench watching people walk their dogs, and she said, "Do you think you'd ever propose to someone you've known for less than 3 months?" I laughed, obviously, and said something like, "I mean, depends. Are we trapped in a Netflix original or?" But she didn't laugh. She just looked at me and said, "Just curious." After that, stuff got weird. Not bad, just weirder. She started dropping hints constantly, showing me ring designs on Pinterest, making jokes like, "Don't worry, I'm not expecting a rooftop surprise or anything, unless..." She'd ask questions like, "How do you feel about courthouse weddings?" Or, "What's your budget for something spontaneous?" She even once pointed out an engagement ring ad on the train and said, "Simple, but classy. That's how I do it." I thought maybe she was just messing with me, or had wedding brain because of our mutual friend's engagement. So I laughed it off. But then one night we were at her apartment, and I went to grab my charger from her desk drawer while she was in the kitchen. Inside was a literal checklist. A real checklist written in neat handwriting on a page ripped from a notebook. The title? 3-month Engagement Challenge. I stared at it like it might disappear. It had bullet points. Like, date at least 3 times a week. Introduce him to friends. Say I love you before 8-week mark, like, are you serious? Leave stuff at his place. Subtly suggest ring style. Emotional vulnerability moment. Cry once, but not too much. Bonus points. Spontaneous trip. There was a tally at the bottom. And I'm not kidding. It said, currently at 9.5 out of 10. Stay consistent. I sat down on the edge of her bed like I just stepped into a prank video. I didn't even take the charger. Just stared at this page, trying to make sense of it. When she came back into the room, I was still holding it. She didn't even look surprised, just raised an eyebrow and said, "You weren't supposed to see that yet." Yet. I didn't even know what to say. I asked her if it was a joke, and she said, completely calmly, "Not really. It's a bet with some of my girls. More of a challenge." One of us said it wasn't possible to get a guy to propose in under 3 months without cheating, crying daily, or getting pregnant. I said I could do it. I must have blinked like 50 times in a row. I said, "Wait, so this has all been, what, a game?" She rolled her eyes and said, "It's not like I don't like you. I just also want to prove a point." A point. I left. I didn't even argue. I just walked out like my brain had disconnected from my body and was floating behind me. She texted me that night, "Hope this doesn't make things weird. I still genuinely enjoy our time." Like that would fix it. I ghosted. Fully. No reply. Deleted her number, unmatched on everything, blocked her just in case. A few weeks later, my friend told me she posted a photo of a fake ring on her story with a caption, "Hold y'all." It wasn't me in the picture. I'm guessing it was part of her little performance, or maybe she just wanted the optics. To this day, I don't know if she ever really liked me or if I was just a solid pick for her 3-month plan. All I know is I came this close to being the ending of a TikTok story with lo-fi music and glitter text that says, "He had no idea." That was Aisha, the girl who treated relationships like speedruns. So this one honestly still messes with me a little just because of how slow it all clicked. Like it wasn't some big dramatic reveal. There was no meltdown or confrontation. It was more like realizing halfway through the movie that you're just a side character, and the real story has nothing to do with you. Laura and I matched on Hinge one afternoon while I was waiting for my laundry to dry, which sounds random, but whatever. Timing's weird. Her profile was super aesthetic, beige tones, reading glasses, coffee shots. She had one of those bios that's vague on purpose. Here for depth, curiosity, and a good breakfast sandwich. It didn't say much, but it had that soft, curated vibe like she was a walking Pinterest board. I figured she was either deeply introspective or just very into clean fonts. She messaged me first, which was cool. Just said, "You look like someone who has strong opinions about cereal." I did, actually, and we started talking from there. She was witty, not too try-hard, and asked a ton of questions. What kind of music I listened to when I was sad, what movie I thought was overrated, if I believed closure was real or just an excuse. Her questions felt deep without being heavy. She was thoughtful, but casual. It worked. We met a week later at a tea spot she picked that I'd never heard of. One of those places where the menu is 80% herbs and 20% vibes. She ordered some drink that tasted like boiled pine cones and talked about how she was trying to be more present this year. She was intense, but in a quiet way, like she took in everything you said and stored it somewhere in a vault. I liked it. It felt like she was actually listening, not just waiting for her turn. First few dates were all like that. Thoughtful, unrushed. We'd sit in cafes and talk for hours about stuff most people only bring up at 2 a.m. Emotional patterns, growing apart from your parents, stuff we wished we'd said to our younger selves. It felt like connection. Not chemistry necessarily, but something real. And yeah, we kissed. We held hands. We cuddled once during a movie night where she made me turn off all the lights and said the darkness made it easier to be honest. I was into her. I mean, how could I not be? But around the third or fourth date, I started noticing weird patterns. Like she'd ask me how I'd respond to super specific situations. Not hypotheticals, actual lines. She once said, "What would you say if someone told you they don't believe in soulmates, but think you feel like one anyway?" I thought she was trying to be deep. I gave a heartfelt answer. She nodded and literally said, "Cool. That's helpful." Helpful. That word stuck. Another time she asked what I'd do if someone I was into pulled back emotionally for a bit, like if I'd waited out or check in right away. I said something about how it'd depend on the person, and she took out her phone and wrote something down in her notes app. She didn't explain, just smiled and said, "I like your perspective." I told myself she was just introspective, a thinker. Maybe she was journaling or whatever, but it started happening more. The questions became more pointed. She asked me how I reacted when someone was bad at communication, how I handled being told no, how I responded to mixed signals. At first, I thought maybe she had a past she was trying to unpack. Then one night, I brought up this small thing, some dumb meme I'd sent her that she hadn't replied to, and joked about how she ghosted the joke. She kind of tensed and said, "Oh, I didn't realize we were doing feedback now." And I laughed like, okay, that's a weird reaction. But then she said, "It's actually good to know. You don't like being ignored. That tracks." That tracks. Who says that in a relationship context? It felt like she was cataloging my reactions, logging them, like I was part of some personal study. The final click came when I saw her phone light up while we were out getting dessert. She was checking her notifications, and I caught a glance of a text from someone named Elliot, and it just said, "So how'd the honesty convo go?" She didn't notice I saw it, or the way my stomach dropped. Yeah. Later that night, when she went to the bathroom, I snooped a little. Not proud of it, but I opened her notes app. Right there on top was a note titled "Practices for E." Inside were bullet points. Try honesty convo. Use soulmate metaphor. Gauge reaction to space/pullback dynamic. Watch for humor plus emotional depth crossover. Try physical distance plus warmth combo on next talk. Repeat picnic strategy, but ask more questions. It hit me all at once. I wasn't the main character. I was the dress rehearsal. I was the warm-up act, the test drive. She was literally practicing on me, testing out phrases, behaviors, situations to use with this other guy. Elliot. I was the lab. He was the end game. I didn't even say anything. I just waited until she came back, made up some excuse about needing to get up early, and left. She texted that night saying she had a really fulfilling time and hoped we could keep having honest exchanges. I didn't reply. A week later, she unfollowed me. Then a few days after that, she soft launched a picnic photo with someone I'm guessing was Elliot. Same blanket we sat on. Same park. So, yeah, Laura was kind and smart and emotionally aware. But she wasn't with me. She was using me to calibrate. And honestly, I hope the final performance bombs. Dylan didn't seem like trouble. If anything, he seemed kind of boring in a safe way when we first matched on Bumble. He had a pic with a dog, one at a brewery, and a selfie that looked like it was taken in the backseat of an Uber. His bio said, "Civil conversations over cancel culture. Love coffee, road trips, and a good debate." I probably should clock the word debate as a red flag, but I was in a phase where I thought open-mindedness just meant letting everyone talk, even if they sounded like a Joe Rogan comment section. We matched on a Thursday night, and he messaged almost instantly with, "So are you a coffee purist, or do you let Starbucks ruin you?" I laughed because I had a pic holding a pink drink, and I appreciated the roast. He was witty, quick with comebacks, and didn't launch into trauma or overshare territory, which was refreshing for once. We exchanged like 30 messages in a row before we even touched anything deeper. He said he worked in tech but hated tech bros. Claimed he was socially fluid, politically complex, which I assumed meant he wasn't super locked into anything. I asked a few general questions and he gave safe-ish answers. Said he leans practical but isn't defined by labels. Again, I just thought he was trying to sound moderate. I wasn't trying to get into a philosophical cage match over avocado toast and minimum wage. I just wanted to go on a decent date. We met up a week later at a rooftop cafe that somehow had zero shade, but still served hot drinks. I was already sweating, and he was late by like 15 minutes, but he showed up holding an iced black coffee like he owned the weather. We sat down, and he immediately launched into this story about trying to get his friend banned from Twitter as a prank. I didn't really get the point, but he laughed a lot while telling it. Still, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was charming, talked with his hands, and looked at you like he was studying a puzzle. Said things like, "That's an interesting lens," when I mentioned I studied sociology in college. It felt like he was listening, even when I didn't like his replies. About halfway through the date, I said something about voting rights and how burnt out I felt after the last election cycle, and he leaned in like he was about to say something scandalous. He said, "You're too smart to still be fully drinking that Kool-Aid." I asked what he meant, and he smiled and said, "Let's just say, I think if we talked long enough, you'd see things a little clearer." I laughed, thought he was being sarcastic, but he wasn't. The more we talked, the more it became clear he wasn't just moderate. He had actual strategies. Like, he was asking questions that weren't really questions, more like guided traps. He'd say stuff like, "But don't you think identity politics has gone too far?" Or, "Why do you think the media only shows one side?" I tried to counter, and he'd nod like he was humoring me, not listening. He was polite about it, sure, but he wasn't debating. He was steering, nudging. I thought, okay, maybe he just likes arguing. Maybe this is just his flirting style. We ended the date with a weird kind of tension, like a tennis match that no one won. Still, he texted me the next day and asked to hang out again. And for some reason, I said yes. I told myself I didn't want to be someone who blocks people over politics. I thought maybe he'd show more depth if I gave him space. Second date was more chill. We went to a park, laid on a blanket, and talked about music. And then slowly again, it turned into another conversation. He asked me if I ever considered how feminism might have unintended consequences. I gave him a look and asked if he was serious, and he hit me with some rehearsed monologue about statistical disparities and how we're all victims of the system. It was all very polished, very Reddit core. I told him it felt like he was trying to argue on a podcast, not talk to a person. He said, "I just like challenging assumptions." Later that night, we were sitting in his car, and I noticed a notebook sticking out from under his passenger seat. I picked it up without thinking. It was one of those cheap spiral ones. I flipped it open, expecting dumb sketches or notes from a work meeting. Nope. It was full of bullet points, lists of topics, starred sections, trigger words, common responses from liberal women, pushback strategy, guilt versus logic, phase 1, report, phase 2, challenge, phase 3, refrain. I read it out loud. He didn't even try to deny it. He shrugged and said, "Yeah, it's something I've been working on. Most people don't change unless they trust you first. You build emotional connection, then gradually help them see things differently." He literally called it long-term persuasion. Said he picked women who seemed ideologically confident and tried to reshape their framework from the inside. I said, "So, you date people to convert them?" And he just looked at me like I finally got it. He said, "Exactly." I didn't even know what to say. I got out of the car and walked home. He didn't follow me. Didn't even text that night. The next day, he sent me this long message about how he respected my independence and valued my resistance, and said I was a kind of challenge that keeps a person honest. I didn't reply. A week later, a friend of a friend sent me a link to his Twitter. Different name, locked profile, but his face was in the banner. He had threads, long ones, about ideological intimacy and how romantic relationships are the most effective way to disrupt belief systems. There were diagrams, hashtags, even a link to a private forum where he offered coaching. So, yeah, Dylan wasn't dating. He was recruiting. using charm and intimacy as tools to wear people down. And I was just another project to him, another person to test his theory on. Looking back, everything he said now sounds like it came from a script. I don't know if he ever actually liked me, or if he just liked how resistant I was. Either way, I wasn't a date to him. I was a potential conversion rate. Zayn was the kind of guy who looked like he'd never forgotten to update a calendar invite in his life. His dating profile was super clean, like no group photos, no Snapchat filters, no weird gym mirror flexes. Just crisp, well-lit pics and a bio that said something like precision, not perfection. Data nerd, espresso loyalist, investor of time, and sometimes crypto. That last line made me roll my eyes a little, but he wasn't giving finance bro energy. More like Google Calendar come to life. We match on Hinge. His first message was, "You seem like someone who knows what she wants." Is that true or just clever editing? I kind of loved that it wasn't a basic opener, and we got into a whole conversation about how dating apps are just shopping carts for personalities. It was weirdly philosophical, refreshing even. We went back and forth for a couple of days before he asked to meet for coffee. He picked this sleek spot I'd never heard of, the kind with concrete floors and no menu, where you just tell the barista your vibe and they hand you a drink. Of course, that's where he wanted to go. Zayn showed up right on time, holding his phone in one hand like it was part of his body. He was put together, clean shoes, subtle cologne, watch perfectly straight on his wrist. I sat down thinking, okay, this guy probably folds his laundry as it comes out of the dryer. He smiled, asked how my week was, and within like 5 minutes, he was asking me questions that felt like he'd memorized them from a guide. What's your relationship with structure? Do you think independence and commitment are compatible? How do you process emotional feedback? I remember thinking, damn, this guy is thorough. But it didn't feel cold. He laughed at my jokes. He had solid eye contact, and he listened, like really listened. After our second date, he remembered that I only like my fries extra crispy and that I hate slow walkers. It felt intentional, like this dude is studying me, but in a way that kind of flattered me at the time. Things started to get weird on the third date. We were sitting at his place after dinner, just chatting, and I noticed he kept checking his phone. Not texting, just glancing down, tapping something, then putting it back down again. After the third or fourth time, I asked him if he was working. He said, super casually, no, just updating some notes. I laughed and asked, notes on what? He looked at me dead in the face and said, you. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He explained that he likes to track patterns in the people he dates and that he keeps light data to better understand compatibility. He said it like he was telling me what kind of toothpaste he uses. No shame. No hesitation. I kind of laughed again, waiting for the punchline, and he just said, do you want to see it? I said no, but he showed me anyway. He pulled out his laptop and opened a Google sheet, and I swear, I felt my soul leave my body for a second. There were names down the left column. Mine was there. First name only, each row had categories. I don't remember all of them, but there were ones like appearance, emotional intelligence, communication style, obedience, and financial liability. Like this dude literally had obedience as a category. I was halfway between screaming and laughing from how surreal it felt. He scrolled across the columns, explaining his logic like this was totally normal. He said, you score high in attentiveness. Your income bracket's solid. You push back sometimes, but I find that useful. He said it all like he was reviewing an investment portfolio, not an actual human being who was sitting on his couch, watching her entire personality get spreadsheeted. I asked him how many people were in it. He said he's had about 36 serious interactions over the past 2 years, and that only a few ever reach what he calls partner potential. The rest get archived. I asked what that even means, and he said it just means he no longer engages romantically but keeps their data for pattern tracking. Like I was supposed to be okay with that sentence. I asked him if he thought any of this was weird, and he tilted his head and said, not if you value clarity. Feelings are unpredictable. This helps reduce the noise. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a quirk. This was a system. He wasn't dating women, he was analyzing them, scoring them, optimizing them. He didn't see people, he saw inputs, variables, outcomes. I suddenly remembered a comment he made on our first date. Oh, how dating apps are like markets. I thought he was being cheeky. He wasn't. I left that night and never saw him again. I blocked his number before I even got home. He never texted anyway. He probably just archived me and added a note about how I exhibited discomfort with transparency. Zayn wasn't looking for love. He was running a human spreadsheet experiment, and was just another row in a file he'd color code later. I met Mandy at a friend's barbecue, which already felt like a green flag because that's one of the few places left where meeting someone doesn't involve swiping or emoji games. She was standing near the grill, wearing sunglasses even though the sun was mostly gone, talking to some guy about attachment styles like it was casual small talk. I was bored and nursing a half-flat drink, so I kind of drifted over. She looked at me, tilted her head, and said, "You look like you know the difference between avoidant and anxious." That was her opener. That's literally how this whole thing started. We started dating a few weeks later. It happened fast, not in a love bomb way, just like she already knew what she was doing and I didn't even have time to overthink it. She'd text just the right amount, send memes that were weirdly on brand for me, ask questions that made me feel like I was being really seen, like stuff I hadn't talked about in years suddenly seemed interesting because she asked about it. She worked in relationship consulting, which I thought meant she helped couples communicate better or something. I didn't really ask more than that because it sounded legit enough, and honestly, I liked that she had a niche. I thought it was cool that she was into psychology, and she always had these crazy smart takes on why people behave the way they do. She wasn't just insightful, she made you feel like you were insightful too just by talking to her. Things were good for the first month or so, honestly better than good. We had that constant texting energy without it getting annoying. Our dates were always a little too perfect, like the lighting at the restaurants, the music in the background, her outfit matching the mood. It all just worked. I should have realized nobody nails that much symmetry on accident. What started to feel weird was how often she asked me about how things were going. Not us necessarily, just me. Like, she'd ask how I felt during specific moments, what I thought when she complimented me, whether I liked when she showed up at my place unannounced with food, if I'd been caught off guard, or if I expected it. At first, I figured she was just emotionally intelligent. Then I started noticing patterns. Every time I shared something personal, she'd try something slightly different in response. One week, she'd be ultra nurturing, soft, saying things like, "That makes total sense. You're really self aware." The next time, she'd sort of challenge me, push back, say, "Do you ever think you're performing a version of vulnerability?" Like she was flipping switches, trying to see which reaction got better results. And the thing is, she always got results. I always felt more attached after those conversations, like I passed some hidden test without even realizing there was one. The turning point was when I met one of her coworkers at a dinner thing she invited me to. It was all low-key, just a few of her work friends at some trendy rooftop spot. I figured it'd be a chance to learn more about her world. Her coworker, this guy named Darius, was kind of tipsy and super chatty. He asked how long we'd been together, and I said about 6 weeks. He nodded and said, "Oh, well, yeah, you're probably already in the notebook by now." I laughed because I thought he was joking. I asked what he meant. He laughed harder and said, "Nah, I'm serious. Mandy always runs her early stage strategy stuff on whoever she's dating. Don't take it personally, though. She's the best in the game." I didn't say anything. I just kind of froze with my drink halfway to my mouth. Later that night, after she fell asleep on my couch, I looked through her tote bag for gum. I know that sounds shady, but I wasn't even trying to snoop. Just wanted something minty, and I knew she always carried packs. That's when I found the notebook. It wasn't hidden. Just sitting there, wedged between a planner and a copy of Attached, I opened it. There were pages of handwritten notes, different names at the top of each section. Mine was there. The title said Subject M. Emotionally self-contained, moderate intimacy fear, strong storytelling instinct. Below it were paragraphs breaking down my responses, reactions, even literal quotes. She had marked the date we first kissed, how I reacted to silence, and what kind of compliments made me look away versus smile. I didn't even know what I was reading. It felt like I had walked in on someone rehearsing a play I didn't know I was starring in. She had written stuff like next step, light jealousy trigger, mentioned male friend, watch body language, potential to test exclusivity reaction in 2 to 3 weeks. There was a whole section about mirror technique, and how she subtly started using my phrases to build rapport. I just sat there holding this notebook in silence while she slept next to me like everything was fine. The next morning, I didn't say anything. I needed time to process. I texted her that night and said I needed space. She didn't fight it, just said, "Let me know if you want to talk." A week later, I found her Instagram for her coaching business. It had clips from workshops, client testimonials, screenshots of feedback from men she'd coached. One of the slides said, "Dating is the test kitchen. Don't serve it that hasn't been taste tested." I wanted to throw my phone. Turns out she was using me the whole time as part of her live application strategies, testing real-time techniques so she could tweak them before presenting them to clients. She wasn't dating me. She was collecting reactions, trial running methods, seeing what stuck. I was basically her beta software. Mandy was the most emotionally tuned in person I'd ever met, but none of it was real. Or maybe it was, but I'll never know. Because everything was just data to her. And I was just another case study with a summary written in pencil. There was something weirdly relaxing about talking to Ben. Like, the first few combos felt like drinking water after too much soda. No over-the-top pickup lines or trying to impress me with a 5-paragraph bio. His profile was short, literally just coffee and silence are underrated. But it made me laugh, so I swiped right. We matched instantly. I messaged first, even though I don't usually. He responded with something sarcastic about how the coffee thing wasn't a metaphor, and we went from there. The way he messaged was kind of addicting. He wouldn't reply right away, but when he did, it was always something that made me think. Not deep in a philosophical way, but just like dry and observant. It made me feel like I wanted to be clever back, and that kept me talking to him. I didn't know it at the time, but I was already starting to play a role. We met at this quiet tea place downtown that I usually forgot existed. I'd been there once before on a random Tuesday when my phone died and I needed to kill time. It wasn't trendy or Instagrammable, which I appreciated. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting on the floor cushion thing by the window, scrolling on his phone with one earbud in. He looked exactly like his pics, but less curated, if that makes sense. More real. A little sleepy looking. Hoodie, old sneakers, jeans with a tiny hole at the knee. I sat down across from him, and it took him a second to look up. He gave me this little half smile and nodded. No hug, no compliment, just straight into a random observation about the people behind the counter. It caught me off guard, but I laughed, and after that, things flowed. The date wasn't amazing or anything, but it was comfortable. I didn't leave with butterflies, just a weird sense of curiosity. He felt like a puzzle that didn't have an image on the box. I saw him again a few days later, and again a week after that. He never made plans too far in advance, but he'd text and say he was free, I'd go. That became our thing. Spontaneous, low-effort meetups that still somehow felt intimate. He never asked deep questions, but he listened when I talked, sort of. He'd nod, glance at my lips sometimes, fidget with a ring on his finger, or look out the window while I was talking. But then he'd remember something I said 2 weeks ago, word for word. That kind of attention messed with my head more than I want to admit. Somewhere along the way, I noticed I started trying to sound cooler, like I'd say things less emotionally. I stopped venting about my day unless it was in a funny way. I never brought up stuff that made me sound like I cared too much. It wasn't that he told me not to. He just had this way of making vulnerability feel excessive. Like he didn't say it out loud, but his face would kind of go blank when I got real. So I adjusted. I made myself easier to digest. It wasn't until maybe a month and a half in that the mood shifted. We were at his place just hanging out. Nothing dramatic happened. I don't know why, but I asked him what kind of people he usually dates. I didn't mean it like a test. I was just curious. He kind of smirked and said, in this super casual tone, that he usually ends up with girls who are a little broken. That was the word he used. Broken. He said it wasn't on purpose at first, but over time he realized he likes when they're unsure of themselves. That it makes the connection feel less performative. I didn't even know what that meant, but I didn't ask. Then he looked at me, shrugged, and said it's just easier when the other person isn't trying to win, that they just want to be chosen. I remember feeling like I'd just been scanned, like he knew exactly where my weak spots were and had been poking at them the whole time without ever making it obvious. I didn't say anything. I just nodded like it made sense. After that night, I couldn't unhear what he said. It echoed in everything, every text, every pause, every compliment that wasn't quite a compliment. I started realizing how often he made me question myself without directly criticizing me. He never said I wasn't enough, but he pointed out things that made me second guess whether I should have shared that story, worn that dress, made that joke. And I always found myself shrinking a little bit just in case. What's wild is I didn't leave right away. I stuck around for another month. I kept thinking maybe I misunderstood. Maybe he didn't mean me. But deep down, I think I knew I was exactly what he described. And I didn't know what that said about me. When it ended, it wasn't messy. No big fight or confrontation. He just stopped replying as fast. Then stopped replying at all. Then 2 weeks later, sent me one of those just thinking about you texts like nothing had happened. I stared at it for a while. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't respond. Now and then I think about him. Usually when I'm talking to someone new, I notice I'm editing myself before I even hit send. And I wonder if they're like him, looking for someone who bends easy, someone they can shake without asking. Ben didn't break my heart, but he left fingerprints in places I didn't know I had. Okay, so I met Olivia on an app I don't even remember downloading. I think it was one of those nights where I was bored and overthinking and figured why not. She had this cool artsy vibe in her pics, messy curls, thrifted outfits, little rings on every finger. Her bio just said poet. Scorpio, complicated. And I knew I should have backed away right then and there, but I didn't. Because I'm dumb and I like complicated apparently. We started talking, and she was way more intense than anyone I'd matched with before. She'd send voice notes instead of texts, which at first felt weird, but then kind of cool, like she was performing something just for me. She talked a lot about her creative cycles and how the right kind of emotional energy helps her write, which sounded deep at the time, but now it kind of makes me gag a little. Anyway, we met at this tiny bookshop cafe that hosted poetry nights. She walked in late, had glitter on her eyelids, and this old hoodie that said something ironic in French. She smelled like coconut oil and patchouli and maybe stress. I don't know. She gave me a long hug like we'd already slept together or something. First date went well in that I think I just survived something kind of way. She asked me questions about my childhood, not even in a soft way, just casually like, were your parents emotionally available growing up or not? And I answered because she made it feel normal. She'd go, oh my God, that's such a poem, after random things I said. I thought it was cute. I didn't realize I was literally feeding her lines. We hung out a lot after that, usually her place. She lived in this cramped studio with candles melted all over jars and a mattress on the floor. She played weird ambient music and always had tea that tasted like leaves and regret. Every time I went over, she'd be in the middle of writing something or editing a photo she took of her own shadow. It was exhausting, but she made me feel like I was part of some big artistic storm. Like I was her muse or whatever. I didn't hate it at first. She'd ask me to talk about the worst things I'd ever been through. Like, unprompted. Just sit across from me with a notebook and say, tell me about the first time you felt completely abandoned. And I did. I really sat there, spilling stuff I hadn't even told my friends. She'd nod like she understood, sometimes cry a little, sometimes just sit in silence like she was processing it for me. And I guess part of me thought, wow, this is intimacy. This is what people mean when they say connection. But then I started noticing patterns. She'd post these long poems on Instagram. She had like 10,000 followers, and some of the stuff sounded really familiar, like eerily familiar. Lines that were straight up pulled from things I'd told her. One of them literally started with something I said about my brother. Word for word, she didn't tag me or anything, just captioned it from a place of healing. So I brought it up, not angrily, just kind of confused. Like, hey, weird question, but is that poem about me? And she was like, oh no, not about you. Just inspired by your truth. She said it like it was a compliment, like I should be honored or something. I kind of laughed it off at the time, but it kept happening. More poems, more stories. She'd post reels with my voice layered under music. Stuff I said when I didn't even know she was recording. One night, she asked if she could take a picture of me crying. She said I looked raw. I said no. She did it anyway when I went to the bathroom and then texted it to me like it was a gift. Things got weirder. She started picking fights on purpose, and I swear it was to make me feel off balance. Like, she'd say things that made no sense just to get a reaction, then disappear for a few days and come back like nothing happened. Once I told her something really personal about my relationship with food, and the next day she posted a poem called What Hunger Teaches Boys. I just stared at my phone like, what the hell? I finally snapped when she posted this carousel of poems that were clearly all about me. One of the slides had a picture of a shirt I left at her place next to a burned out candle with the caption Souvenirs from the Wreckage. I didn't even care about the shirt. It was just the fact that I'd been turned into a character. Like my real life pain was just a part of her aesthetic. So I texted her and said I needed space. She replied with a quote from Rilke and then blocked me. That was the last thing I heard from her. A week later, she posted a new zine called The Ones Who Let Me Write Through Them. She was holding it up in her Insta story, smiling with that same glitter and deadpan look like none of it meant anything. I still see her stuff sometimes. Mutuals will repost it. People comment things like, wow, this captures something I've never been able to say out loud. And I get it. She's talented. She really is. But also, a lot of that stuff came from people like me. People she drew things out of like she was mining for gold. People who didn't realize they were being used until it was too late. I'm more careful now, not just about who I date, but who I'd open up to. Some people want to know your story just so they can sell it back to you in prettier words. I met Tyler on a Sunday afternoon when I was bored out of my mind, half watching a YouTube video and mindlessly swiping. I wasn't really into dating apps at that point. I'd had a streak of dry, awkward conversations that died after 2 days, and I had basically written them off. But he had this dumb bio that said, I know a place that does the best dumplings if you're into bad decisions and MSG. And I don't know why, but I swiped right. We matched within like 5 minutes. I was already halfway through a bag of chips and fully prepared to ignore him when he messaged me first. And honestly, he was funny. Way funnier than I expected. Like, not just meme sharing funny, but actual clever responses. He asked good questions without sounding like he was trying to sell himself. We talked about food, reality TV, the worst concerts we'd ever been to, and how he once accidentally joined a jazzercise class thinking it was a yoga thing. I liked him. Way more than I thought I would. We met up that same week. He picked a taco truck spot in the park and brought a picnic blanket, which felt kind of old school in a nice way. He was charming, way more polished than most people I've met off apps. Good eye contact, nice smile, chill outfit. He looked like someone who had his life kind of figured out, but not in an annoying look at me kind of way. Just stable. And he made me laugh so hard I almost choked on a taco. That was kind of the tone of our whole thing. Just easy, low stress funny. We hung out a lot after that, mostly casual stuff. He never pressured anything. Always paid, always texted first, always followed up. It honestly felt kind of surreal. Like, every guy I dated before had at least one glaring red flag within the first 2 weeks. With him, I kept waiting for the catch, and it never came. Until it did, of course. It started small. He'd get these random phone calls and step out to take them. No big deal, right? He said they were work calls. But then one time we were watching a movie and his phone lit up with a name saved as Chris MTV. And I was like, what? He kind of brushed it off, said he was working on something media adjacent, whatever that meant. I didn't press because I figured he'd explain when he was ready. But more things started not adding up. He had a nice apartment but said he worked freelance. He always had cash on him. He never posted on social media but was always filming random stuff on his phone. Like he'd set it up on a little tripod while we were cooking and say he was testing out a time-lapse thing. At first, I thought he was just quirky or maybe trying to start a cooking page or something. But then he started asking really specific questions, like, how would you react if you found out someone you were dating was keeping a secret? Or, what's the most dramatic moment you've ever had with a guy? Again, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe he just liked deep talks. Then one night he asked if I wanted to go on a little weekend trip. Just a cheap cabin thing with a hot tub. I said yeah. We'd been seeing each other for almost 2 months at that point. I trusted him. We drove out of town, got takeout, listened to music, had this dumb inside joke about how every gas station bathroom has a weird smell as 40% soap and 60% to spare. It was good. Too good, honestly. That night, while he was showering, I was using his laptop to put on some music. Spotify was already open, but I accidentally clicked on a folder on the desktop labeled Pitch Decks. I wasn't snooping. I genuinely thought it was maybe podcast ideas or something. Nah, it was a PowerPoint, a full-on pitch presentation with my face in it. I wish I was exaggerating. I wish this was a joke. But there it was, a full layout for a reality show called Modern Love Lies. The concept. Following a guy secretly dating multiple women to expose how people behave when trust is broken. It had a whole breakdown of contestant types, demo footage, some of which looked suspiciously like it was filmed on those random nights we were cooking, and even a page titled Jess, emotionally open, media-friendly face, potential audience favorite. My name, on a slide, in a deck. I didn't even know what to do. My hands were shaking so bad I closed the laptop and sat there in silence for a full minute. When he came out of the bathroom, towel around his shoulders, acting all normal, I couldn't even speak. I just grabbed my stuff and left. I blocked him the second I got back into town. I didn't answer any of his texts. The worst part, he didn't even deny it. His last message said, "I didn't want you to find out like that. It was going to be bigger than us." Bigger than us. Like our entire thing was a plot point. Like I was a stepping stone for his little Netflix dream. I never saw him again. But a few months later, someone sent me a link to a Kickstarter for a docuseries about dating culture through the lens of deception. Guess who was the creator? Tyler. Same guy. Same face. He had changed the name of the project, but the description was almost word for word what I saw in that pitch deck. I don't know if it ever got picked up. I don't care. Now I just delete the app every time I re-download it, like it owes me an apology. I met Diane at a bar, not on an app this time, just a real-life human interaction, which felt rare and kind of refreshing. I was out with some coworkers, half drunk off overpriced seltzer drinks, and she was sitting at the far end of the bar, tapping her nails on her glass in a way that weirdly made me look up. She had that look, like she'd seen some shit and wasn't trying to impress anyone. I like that. No fake laugh, no performative selfies, just sharp eyes and this cool detachment that made everyone else feel like noise. I didn't even think she'd talk to me, but she did. We ended up talking for like an hour right there, just leaning over the bar while my friend slowly wandered off to karaoke. She told me she'd been sober for 3 years, talked about how wild her 20s were, how she's into people who've been through fire. I thought it was deep. I liked how honest she seemed. She didn't flirt the way most people do. No flattery and with cheesy lines. Just intense eye contact and casually deep questions like, "What do you regret most about last year?" She gave me her number and I saved it under Diane Bar. I ended up texting her the next day, and she invited me to a cafe that was aggressively quiet and filled with the smell of matcha and vintage furniture. She was sitting there already when I walked in, sipping black coffee and reading some weird psychology book about impulse control. We talked for hours. I told her I was a few months out of recovery, that I quit drinking because it made me someone I didn't like. She nodded and didn't ask a million follow-up questions. That made me like her more. Most people would either judge or turn it into some weird therapy session. She just accepted it and moved on. For a while, things felt solid. She wasn't clingy, wasn't distant, just sort of there. She had this really steady energy that I started depending on more than I realized. We didn't do big dates or weekend getaways. It was always coffee shops, lawn walks, grocery runs, sitting on her couch while she painted or folded laundry. And I liked that. It felt real, like something I could actually have, not something I had to earn. She'd ask about meetings, asked how I was doing, always in this low-key way, like she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She made it seem like she'd been through it, like she understood what it meant to wake up and feel like your body was trying to lie to your brain. But then I started noticing stuff. Subtle things. The first red flag was at her place. I went to grab a glass of water from her kitchen and opened the wrong cabinet. Inside were 2 full bottles of whiskey. Like, untouched, brand new. I stood there for a second just staring at them, confused. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said they were left over from her past, and that she kept them as some sort of self-discipline test. I didn't love that, but she seemed unfazed, so I let it go. Then one night, we went to this dinner party at her friend's place. Everyone was drinking wine, and I swear I saw her sip from someone's glass. Just once. Like a little taste. I didn't say anything right then because I wasn't sure. But it stuck with me. The next few times we hung out, I kept getting this vibe I couldn't explain. Like she was a little too calm about certain things, or a little too interested in how I was feeling triggered lately, like she was watching something unfold. The truth hit me at this stupid dive bar we went to one night. I know, by choice. I wasn't drinking, obviously, but she said she liked the jukebox and promised we'd only stay for one set. We sat at a booth in the corner, and she went to get us sodas. I watched her walk up to the bar and chat with the bartender for a minute, and then, plain as day, I saw her take a shot. Just quick, casual, tossed it back like it was nothing. Then she brought me my drink like nothing happened. That's when it clicked. All of it. The whiskey bottles, the little sips, the two specific questions. I asked her flat out on the walk home. I didn't yell, I didn't freak. I just said, "You're not sober, are you?" She smiled. I swear to God, she smiled. Not like she was caught, but like I'd finally figured out the riddle. She told me she never claimed to be sober. That I just assumed. That I probably wanted her to be because it made me feel safer. Then she dropped the worst part. She said she only dates people in recovery. Said she likes watching people struggle with temptation. That is the rawest version of a person. She said most people hide their urges, but when someone's fighting an addiction, it's like all the masks are off. She called it honest living, like she was doing some kind of emotional anthropology or something. I didn't even know what to say. I just stared at her like she'd grown another head. She said she wasn't trying to hurt anyone. It was just interesting to her. That she respected people who could resist. I left right there. Didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. I thought about drinking that night. I didn't, but I thought about it, and that scared me more than anything. Looking back, I can't believe I missed it. How she always watched so closely when I talked about cravings. How she asked about the hardest days like she wanted me to get detailed. Like she was waiting for something to crack. I blocked her number the next morning. Haven't seen her since. But sometimes when I go to meetings and hear someone talk about how someone in their life triggered a relapse, I wonder how many other people Diane's done that to. How many people she's tested. How many people didn't walk away in time. I met Nick through a mutual friend who swore he was one of the good ones. That phrase already sets off alarms for me, but I let it slide because I was tired of meeting strangers through apps, and I figured, why not let someone else pick for once? I met him at a housewarming thing. Not a wild party, just a quiet group of people sitting on the floor with too much wine and Trader Joe's snacks. He walked in late with a bike helmet under his arm and apologized for sweating through his shirt, which made everybody laugh. He had this real easygoing vibe that made people relax around him. The kind of guy who listens like he actually cares and always smells like cedarwood and clean laundry. We didn't talk much that night, just a few quick convos while we both hovered around the same hummus plate. But I added him after on Instagram, and he followed me back a few hours later. He liked a few old posts, not too deep, not creepy, and then messaged something funny about one of my stories. It felt natural, like he didn't overthink it, and I didn't either. We started talking more, nothing too intense. Just back and forth banter, a few deep dives here and there, but mostly light stuff. He'd send pictures of his walk to work, weird signs he saw around the city, random thoughts that didn't really have a point but made me laugh. I started looking forward to his messages more than I wanted to admit. After a couple weeks, we made plans to get dinner. It was at this raw men spot with outdoor seating and too many string lights. But it was chill. The conversation was easy, like we'd known each other longer than we had. He asked questions that weren't fake deep, just curious in a quiet way. Like he wanted to know how my mind worked, not just the usual first date stuff. He told me he was studying psychology, doing research for his grad program, something about emotional resilience. It sounded vague, but smart enough that I didn't question it. Things didn't move fast. We weren't instantly inseparable, but we kept seeing each other. Long walks, bookstore hangouts, sitting in parks and talking until it got dark. He listened more than he talked, which I liked. Most people just wait for their turn to speak. He made space. I didn't realize until later how calculated that probably was. Over time, I found myself opening up more than I usually do. About old relationships, things that messed me up, stuff I hadn't said out loud in a long time. And he never interrupted. Just nodded, sometimes asked for more details, always had this calm, "It's safe here" kind of energy. I felt like I was unfolding in front of someone who wasn't trying to fix me or judge me. It felt rare, intimate, maybe even a little addictive. The weird thing is, I didn't notice anything was off until it was way too late. There were little things, I guess, like how he never talked too much about himself. If I asked about past girlfriends, he'd just say it didn't work out and change the subject. He didn't bring up his family at all. And whenever I asked about his research, he'd give these vague answers about studying how people deal with emotional rupture or observing real-time responses to unexpected breaches of trust. That sounded academic enough to fly over my head. I didn't think to press. Then one night I was over at his place and he left the room to take a call. I wasn't snooping or anything. His laptop was open, and I thought it'd be nice and plug it in since the battery was low. When I went to grab the charger, the screen shifted from sleep mode to some open doc. I didn't mean to read it, but my own name caught my eye. It was a transcript of me, a full conversation we'd had, word for word. Things I said when I thought we were just hanging out. It wasn't just quotes either. It had timestamps, emotional notes, interpretations. Like, subject displays visible discomfort when probed about father. Voice lowers, hands fidget, avoids eye contact. And then a whole section about test boundaries achieved by stage trust breach, which hadn't even happened yet. I felt sick. When he came back in the room, I just stared at him. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything, just asked, "What is this?" He didn't even look surprised, just kind of sighed and said, "I knew you'd find it eventually." That sentence still pisses me off. He explained, calmly like a freaking therapist, that his thesis was about vulnerability in the context of relational intimacy. He said he was documenting how people react when trust is established and then disrupted. That he wasn't trying to hurt anyone, but that real data required real relationships. He said most people don't let their guard down unless they feel safe. So his method was to create that safety, build it, and then take a step back to watch what happens. I was the control subject, apparently. The one who wasn't being compared to anyone else, just fully observed from start to finish. He said I was one of the most emotionally responsive participants so far, like it was a freaking lab rat who cried well. I left without saying another word. It didn't even feel dramatic. I just walked out and didn't look back. He tried to text me a week later. Some long message about how he didn't mean to cause harm and how he hoped I could understand the value of his work. I blocked him before finishing it. Every once in a while, I wonder how many other people he did that to. How many participants were out there trying to make sense of what felt like a real connection? I don't talk about him much now. It feels gross to admit I was that open with someone who saw me like data, who literally treated my pain like a spreadsheet. But yeah, sometimes I wonder what kind of chart I became. A graph in a PowerPoint, a bullet point on someone's academic poster. I hope he gets a C on that stupid thesis.